at the Burlington Public Library. The Path to Liberation. So it's going to be kind of course, with Geshe, a Buddhist take, but also an accessible take on having a meaningful life by cultivating some basic Buddhist principles. So that's really our outreach for the local community. It will be from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, but also for those of you who are not local, we will be streaming that. So if you are interested, you're very welcome and we'd love to have you. Then coming up
11 to 1, not 1 to 3, 11 to 1.
Oh, what time is it, Dave? Sorry.
11 to 1.
11 to 1. I'm sorry. Yeah. 11 to 1. 11 to 1. Thank you for that. And next month, we will have the Chakra Samvara commentary. And also we are going to be participating in the Visakha Puja, the Vesak festival, which will be in Mississauga, which is kind of like 2 suburbs over from where we are. And also people who are local, you're welcome to join us. It's all of, well, not all, but many of the Buddhist communities and temples in the Greater Toronto area, a lot of heritage Buddhist communities, some kind of non-heritage or mixed communities as well. So that will be next month. And then in June, we were thinking to send out people a save the date. I don't know, Dave, if you know the date off the top of your head. I don't know.
I get it.
Forgotten. But the Vajrasattva initiation will be happening. This will be at the Burlington Public Library as well. But we will also be streaming that. However, it's only streamed live on Zoom, so you won't be able to watch it later or anything like that. You have to be there kind of in the exact time, but it will be available on Zoom. And the idea is that we're going to keep it on the Sunday because that's when a lot of people said they were available. But the following Sunday, we'll take a break again from regularly scheduled program, and Geshe will just give an overview of the Vajrasattva practice. So just kind of an introduction to the Vajrasattva practice. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Dave, if there's anything I've forgotten and you'd like to mention, please jump in. But otherwise, I'll invite Geshe down and we'll get started in 2 or 3 minutes. Make yourselves comfortable.
Yeah, that's right.
David Manoshi mentioned to me, are the lights inside the alcove where the Buddha is working? So maybe you can see now, they are indeed working. You can see a little bit of green above him, maybe.
Going through the rainbow.
You want the, is it changing?
Yeah.
Is that like distracting or is that okay?
I think it's all right.
It's okay? All right. No, decent.
Yeah, Tashi Dele.
So Tashi Dele, greetings everyone. Can you hear Geshe and myself all right?
Yes.
Great.
오야 다 강가다시 델레통 드네 로소소가 다 로조도 노래 야지로 쉬이라 치모요스.
So Tashi, daily greetings to everyone, and Geshe hopes that your study, that your practice of the teachings are continually improving.
다 가로소더니 다 무체 물리여 보대. 다 가로소들이 지네 루루제 다 내가 쪼데 수니 보게 다 야지도 야기 제대로 내가 지금 요레스.
So of course, we are gathered here together for the purpose of maximizing this human rebirth, this human body that we have. And specifically, in order to do that, we want to exert ourselves in accumulating the two collections.
다 수니더니 보게 다 마셔 고네 펴와 내가 제가야 되고 다 이제 로제 강가를 대시 보게 벌써 수바 다시 맞이 그 요레스.
So it is on the basis of these two collections, if we have not accumulated something towards them before newly accumulating it, if we have begun the accumulation of them, flourishing that, and if we have a good accumulation of that, making sure that it continues and continues. And it is on the basis of these accumulations of the two collections that we can be a person of benefit to both ourselves and others.
다 여보 따와 이나야 다 수니데 보게 다 초와 가제 템보슈나 다 니가게 대시 이나요 다 벌써 수바 나는 텔라 때네 다 다두게 대시 돼야지 텐데 요레스.
So if we look at it carefully, we'll see that if we are able to maintain kind of a steady engagement with the accumulation of these two collections, that this will become a source not only for temporary happiness, but also of ultimate happiness for oneself and others.
다 수니데 다 조 간디시는 다 간좀 머세데 야버디 나는 레와 고시 가르세나 조 동바도 땡주니 그 돈이 다 보게 런가로 그 요레스.
So how do we accumulate these two collections? How can we sort of think of them in a way that they fit together? We can think of the two collections as our engagement in the emptiness side, which is wisdom, and the dependent arising side, which is method.
다 동바도 땡주니 그 돈이 다 보게 초 세대 진로 두는 로 토바이나 아니 제와도 시라 니데더니 텔라데네 다 보게 야지는 요레스.
Seradang sheramnila.
제와도 시라.
Sherap, los. So if we are able to kind of bring getting the sauce pretty early. So if we want to kind of bring emptiness and dependent arising sort of inside our mind, bring them both inside, what we'll find if we are able to do that is that we are able to easily bring forth both kind of that altruistic intention, compassion, as well as wisdom.
다 간디스레스는 페나 동바 살라바이나 다가제 동마마로 와서 모주지 트비 동와 다 로노아 간디지나 키게 노아 노진 점바 노지 다 매바 동바스리 와레스.
So emptiness, when we speak about emptiness, right, we can understand this kind of in an easy way as it really means empty of something specific, right? It means empty of natural existence or inherent existence. Gonda di hakone dene rangjingi me ba hakone dene zuma karime jogere. So that means that all of those kind of appearances, right, because they are mistaken in terms of grasping at an inherent existence, that they do not exist in the way they appear.
그래서 다 가제 보게 다 디쇼를 놓다가 얘는 다 이식이 주
If we are able to kind of exert ourselves in cultivating this understanding, it becomes the accumulation of the collection of exalted wisdom, and the accumulation of the collection of exalted wisdom on the causal level is especially associated with the attainment of the Dharmakaya or the truth body. So that's the ultimate view leading to that Dharmakaya. But even if we look on the temporary view of the cultivation of this collection of wisdom in our daily life, cultivating that wisdom means that we are going to be less in danger of following down wrong paths and mistaken views. And if we are less engaged with those mistaken paths, then we will experience fewer problems and suffering. And so, it's through these two really that we have a real chance to cultivate a path to true happiness. So when we say dependent arising, right, this means arising, relying upon something, arising in dependence upon something. One thing comes about due to relying on another. So then when we speak about dependent arising, we understand that whether we speak about suffering, whether we speak about happiness, right? These are things that arise in dependence upon other things. And if we look at the perspective of happiness, both temporary happiness and ultimate happiness, we can see that those happinesses arise in dependence upon others, in dependence upon other sentient beings. And that means that if we have that understanding, then lacking kind of mercy or concern for other sentient beings, right? That totally doesn't make sense, right? That altruistic concern is a definite must. Sewasana di ningjeres tesmendaores. Mare, sewa donda karere. Ningje dan kebar kandid.
Oh,
right. Yeah. So I'm just, this word sewa is often translated as compassion, but the word we usually hear for compassion is ningje. And so I'm just trying to kind of chat with Geshe to see what is his feeling or his understanding of the word. And I would say that sewa is like a loving concern or an altruistic concern. Geshe said it's seeing beings as kind of close. He said it's very similar to love and compassion, but it's really that seeing beings as close. So anyways, on the basis of cultivating this dependent arising and emptiness, we can cultivate that along with wisdom. Chichi sana?
Chichi sana nepa.
Ale. And also, if we look in this way and see how these are cultivated, we can also see the power, the potential of the mind.
Keche,
ale. So when we speak about the qualities of the mind, right, we can speak about sort of three fundamental qualities or characteristics. Yeah. So the first characteristic of the mind is we think about it in terms of its nature. We think about it in terms of its nature, and its nature is something that lacks color, lacks shape, lacks those kind of characteristics. It is empty of those characteristics. The second characteristic of this mind is that it is clear in the sense of unobscured. It is unobscured. It is free of obscurations. The third characteristic is that within this mind there can be dawned, there can be reflected any phenomena. If we are able to understand these three qualities of the fundamental mind, then it is said that we are able to understand at a refined level the mind's relative nature. So those were Geshe's short preliminary comments for today's class.
세대 안에 노칼 샤퍼와 노지 가세타다 야는로 가레스.
And if we want our life to be a happy, if we want to be able to find this happiness and welfare, shala namka pia dawaji.
페나 샤죠 노칼 포와이나 샤죠 노칼 로그로와
Yep.
로이 칼 코로스 지만다와 야마레스 뭔가 만다와 만디와스 맞아 고는 고마잖아 로이나 다케잖이야 맞아 고는 고마잖아 고마자가 만다와 지야로와
Yes.
지
Yes.
고마 동보니 바자게데
Yes.
kumbaga jimandawa ji gurwa
Yes. Yes.
no kar shatan ro ina
Uh-huh.
tanda jimandawa thoya mandiwas
Jimin draws on the karere.
koros dosa longa mandawa mandiwas
Ale.
siwo
Los.
kumun ro noji
Los. Ti kogimen du gim sensori. Shenda chilash. Ngene chane koma son kine.
o ta tenda teres mimil
Kine koma son sorry.
o ta alke ya mukin ya radio ta wana sha chembo tin no kala powa ina sha chuchu ina ko shupa dane ka diena le ka chinin ro was
So if we think about a bird flying in the sky, for example, right? If we think about a smaller bird, it has to flap its wings a lot to remain in the sky, whereas a larger bird doesn't have to do this, right? It is able to glide.
ta sha chembo tin ina ko no kala pyu kala shupa koyo badawa ta lele chin ko ro ya chin was
So because he glides, right, this larger bird doesn't have to flap its wings. It is able to just kind of glide upon the air currents smoothly.
o ta ten noji ngaro so se mi pang go ja bikala oni chowa dewa shuna yu tishul shomando chowa dunga shuna yu tishul shomando a ko sarwa chowa to nyo to me ushula yimando tenda lele chin mi pang go ja kan se yares
So when we rest our mind upon a meditative object, right, it is important to be like that larger bird that is gliding and not constantly flapping its wings. When there's an unpleasant feeling, not immediately directing energy to that. When there is a pleasant feeling, not immediately directing energy and attention to that. And also just that sort of timuksena di deduk me parwa. And also when there is a neutral feeling arising, not directing attention to that, just keeping on our object of focus.
o ta ngaro so sel no to mombo chowa du cha mombo yong de ta zo ta de ge ta nye ba chi de yares
And so really when our mind, when we're trying to meditate, is experiencing a lot of different feelings, is experiencing a lot of namtok discursive thought or conceptualization, right? It is important to recollect this.
o ta de chi de ta nye lang ta nga za ta lele chin ma si ta ne do ya is
And so we are going to begin the lesson by just placing our body and mind in a state of relaxation.
lise showa ka se ta ta so wa tu nyo go pa lele ja era ba
So place the body and mind in a relaxed state. Begin by touching the neutral, the fundamentally equanimous nature of the mind.
se che chi se de de be se de da ro je timba do tai ni ma no je ta sa wa ta di su ma ji o so ba ji
Think this mind that possesses the three characteristics that we mentioned. It is clear, just like the sky on a sunny day, not being obscured by clouds.
se koro ro je la ta ni ma no je yu zu lo ta bu ge de shi te to ya ta ni ba pa su ba ji o so ba ji
And the nature of our mind, just like the warm rays of the sun, it is something that can bring happiness, peace to both oneself and others.
so tan de se de shi ge shu lo to do ma do se a de ta ro so so ga ta la pa lo yo so ba ji
And that mind, whether it goes in the direction of happiness or not, this is a responsibility that is in our hands. So our task is to take this fundamental nature of the mind and bring it into a direction where the benefit of both ourselves and others can be achieved. So think myself and others, how wonderful if all of us could experience temporary happiness. But even more wonderful it would be if we could all experience uncontaminated happiness and the causes of that happiness. Meditate on love for sentient beings. So in order to be able to achieve this with single-pointed focus, I will request the blessings of the holy beings. Sorry, so good. So begin with the recitation. Tumbo chom den de jen je ba dra chom ba yan da ba zo be song ge re ba dang shab su dem ba de war she ba je den gem ba ge bu du e ka lo gyur wa la na me ba la da mi nam gi dem ba song ge chom den de pe gya wa sha gya tu ba la cha se lo che de gya ba su chi ho Tenpa chonden de tishin sheba cha chompa yang taba zobe sangye sheba dang shabsu tenpa dewa sheba shiten chenpa chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladang mi namgi tenpa sangye chomden de pe jawa shakya tuba la chazelo chede kyabsu chi ho Tenpa chonden de tishin sheba cha chompa yang taba zobe sangye sheba dang shabsu tenpa dewa Jeba Jiten Chemba Chebu Dewe Kalo Jorwa Lana Meba Ladami Namgi Tumba Sangye Chomdende Pejawa Shakya Tuba La Chazelo Chede Kyabsu Chi. We'll do the prayers to Guru Rinpoche. Gen Yogin Ujanza Pema Geza Dombola Yatsen Jegin Jenye Pema June Jesuja Kodu Kanjo Mambuko Kegi Jesu Dajugi Jinji Lobshir Shesusel Guru Pema Siddhi Dusum Sangye Guru Rinpoche Ngunjukunda Deva Jembuja Baje Gunze Dudu Njabo Sesulwa Dezo Jinji Labdusul Jinang Sangwe Baje Shiva Dang Samba Lungi Juba Jinji Lo Om Ahum Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Om Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Om Ahum Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Om Ahum Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Saji Beki Juji Meto Chan Rirab Lingshi Nidi Genpa Di Sangye Shinda Miden Bovali Roku Nanda Shinla Chepa Sho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Niryata Yami. Refuge and bodhicitta. Chedan soge chenam la jangchu bardu dani kyausu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunange rola benjir sange droba jo. Chedan soge chenam la jangchu bardu dani kyausu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunange rola benjir Sangye Drupa Sho Chedan Sogi Chenam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyausu Chi Dagi Chenyin Gibe Senangi Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Sho. Kampachaya dang chiu and sangala la kare. That's just
Moya tanganzo tomagi ta kalina ta kanusi taya to ta chonchol sushi taya te kachimbo yares.
So, of course, setting the motivation at the beginning of the session and from time to time visualizing the field of merit or the field of accumulation is something that is seen as quite important, right?
O ta zo jisechi gares na ta ngarosu mombochi ta gyoya bodhikyo mombo yaras. Ta ina yo ta kanu to ta so choji shite just ne tembo mena ane mo cha de gewa de根据 khoi jel pa kora jan ro
So what is the reason why we emphasize this so much, right? Well, one of the reasons is most of us, we can say that we are quite accustomed to accumulating virtue, right? To accumulating what is wholesome. But what is lacking is perhaps a refined motivation, as well as a correct field or basis of accumulation. And what happens if we don't pay attention to this issue is that our practice of virtue can actually become a cause for samsara, a cause for the perpetuation of samsara.
lama zonga pi lo ro chi ane chenbo don dimbo kawa ina yo ta tri sundu was mo chen ate tane gewa she yo mo chi she yo te ni ina yo ane sing thala te me ngare ma to kunju khoi jal ro du
Oh, kunjun koro gi.
sing thala te ma ngare ma to
Shingi tura temasa?
ta song ji ge shi do ta si ta ya te yo wa
Yeah.
che te za che wo do za che wo yo wa
Yeah.
ten ji ta gewa ka shi kan ti yo ma wa
Ale los.
te ma to mo chen ate te khoi jal ro du
So then, Lama Tsongkhapa in the Lamrim Chemo, in the great stages on the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and the Lamrim Timbo, the middle-length treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, he explains actually that most beings, most humans, they are involved in the accumulation of virtue. Gonda konso gewa sagi re de yine.
mo chi gewa du yo te ni yin khoi jal ane shon ro du se gewa te
So they engage in the practices of virtue, but those practices of virtue actually become causes of samsara or cyclic existence.
tene so dise yo be kala chushi yo bo si ta ne o gewa de ba yin shin ko ro la thala te ne
Right.
gewa pi ta pon ro ya te ni wo yung yo
That's right. So when we visualize the field of accumulation, this helps to address that problem. Why? Because on the basis of that field of accumulation, those holy beings, it is a powerful object. So through the power of the object, the virtues that one accumulates are elevated. Sorry, now I understand. That's it.
ta ka lo yo ta ten da wo chi re ka lo to mo ne ja chen bo ti sa bo chi ta so no to ne sta ka lo se chi ba yin yo gewa te yo bo chen ro ga was
And it's similar with the motivation, right? It's a kind of a powerful infusion. If we have the correct and vast motivation from the beginning, then the virtues that we accumulated are also elevated.
ta gewa de bi kala ta ta pi ta bo cha ga che de yo chi tu se gen du was ta chi re mo tu du was cha to
Yeah. And also, to really get the foundation or the field in place correctly, we also have the Jorwe Chutruk, the 6 preparatory practices, right? And here it's not just one or two things that we pay attention to. There's actually 6 points of practice.
ta te ji ka ga ta ta ngi to mo la ya de re chu ni de nga zo de pi ta bo yo bo chin ro ya che de re
And all of these are kind of methods to make sure that our accumulation of the 2 collections of merit and wisdom is able to go in the correct direction.
ta ten di ba che ta ten yo ta ne se po ge yo bo yung do ma yo se de te zo lu du se ta zu ma lu tu de re su ma yi do ma yi
And whether we are able to place our mind in that positive direction, this very much, it depends on the clarity.
se do lu zu ma yi na ka ne ge wa ka se ta na yo bo yung yo ra was
Yes.
ka ka
And if the mind and winds are pure, then the virtues that we accumulate, right, we're going to be able to accumulate those very well.
chen nu ji ba la mo bo yo ba yi na chi no ge ne se ka ga to ko ma de was ten da bo no ton da ma da yo ten da bo re di res
It's a little bit like if we think about the surface of the ocean when it's stormy, when there's a lot of waves, we won't be able to see anything beneath the ocean, right? And so in the same way, when our mind is afflicted, right, when our mind is having a lot of projection or conceptual thought, it's the same sort of situation.
ta lu se zu ma ge ten ta le le de
So in order to bring the wind and the mind into a pure, calm space, let us do a meditation.
yu wa ji cha nyo ga ta ka se ta ne le chi so ba chi
So think, I am bringing the 4 elements into balance.
melon ha da ba no ji se en zo ba le shu ka sa ta lan do de ya de ta chi ru ru chi ge so ba chi
So just like breathing ha on the surface of a mirror, and that condensation gradually dissolves into one point, think in this way our mind goes from all of those outflows to those external objects of the world, and we focus inward. So taking as the object of focus the rising and falling of the breath, just focus your mind single-pointedly on that for about a minute. So we want to have this factor of mindfulness that is aware of the rising and falling of the breath. And in the background, we want that quality of introspection, observing if there are distracting thoughts or feelings arising. I think that the body and mind are pure, clear, and at peace. And then let's place a vast motivation within that now clear, pure mind, thinking, I must lead all sentient beings to a state of meaningful happiness. Bring the mind in that direction. Think this attitude of selfish concern, of self-cherishing, this is the root of all difficulties, whereas a mind that cherishes, that appreciates others, is the root of all happiness. So thinking how every single sentient being, without exception, has shown one kindness. Develop this feeling of closeness with sentient beings, this mind of affectionate love, seeing them all as attractive, as worthy. And so think, in order to bring all of these sentient beings to happiness, in order to be able to clear away all of their suffering, I will achieve enlightenment, bring forth the motivation of bodhicitta.
Dende somba noji do togere ani ngara sunga ngasi te ateo tapa do demotivi roji yamare. Shomba do ni shonju sei na yo. Ane roji tripi mo ji ma is a tende jotogre sombaji.
And think, I definitely can do this. I can achieve this. Because that I call the I, the self, is not something that is unchanging or permanent. It is not something that is inherently existent. Likewise, the qualities I seek to develop, love, compassion, and bodhicitta, are not inherently existent. So we'll pause there.
Oh yeah, that can judge your band, Jitanga said that me tattoo to Tandosa, honest when you couldn't know Temba Coron Nojitas, which is Salre, Inayata, Lekajet, that Rambajuatu.
So as we had in the motivation at the beginning, the I or the self, right? If we think about it from the final object of attainment, from our ultimate goal, it is to be able to achieve enlightenment, the same Buddhahood that Lord Buddha himself achieved. So that is the object of attainment. But in order to get there, this is something that must be cultivated in steps, right?
Oh, that Naruso Tsiri is with in a china, that's when you saw a tapil on Lekachi attack.
And so every single word actually in the every single word is like every single word of what? Geshe of the book. Hello. So every single word of the text, every single word of the book, right? It helps us to accumulate these two collections of merit and wisdom. And so that is a reason to proceed in our study of it happily. And another thing that we want to always remember is that one who is endowed with great merit is able to accomplish their aims as exactly as they wish. That's very important to remember. And so, a lot of what we're talking about in the text right now is to help us recognize this great opportunity that we have, to help us recognize why the human form that we have right now is something that is really precious and amazing. So this brings us to the next part of the text, and we are on the 8 incompatible propensities that leave no freedom to practice Dharma. So I'm on page 31 in the revised edition of Words of My Perfect Teacher. People who are tightly bound to their worldly commitments, wealth, pleasures, children, relatives, and so forth, are so preoccupied with the strenuous efforts entailed by these things that they have no time to practice Dharma. So Geshe said to follow these instructions exactly and abandon all these things is probably not going to be so realistic. But what we want to do is just make sure that we are not overly preoccupied with them. So Geshe-la's advice, he said as before, is, of course we are in our livelihood striving towards that samsaric happiness, but what we want to do is, as much as possible, as well, devote some time to striving towards the bliss of liberation. Indrabuti. So some of you may be familiar with the figure of King Indrabuti. Does that ring a bell for anyone? So King Indrabhuti was the one who actually first received the Guhya Samaja Tantra. And so how this happened was he asked the Buddha, how do I cultivate the Dharma without abandoning my palace, my family, and the responsibilities of my kingdom? And so it is said actually he was able to receive instructions, and without abandoning his duties as a king, husband, and so forth, he was able to achieve Buddhahood in that very life. And Geshe said also remember the story of the king who didn't have time to receive teachings or receive teachings from the Buddha. So his wife went to receive those teachings. She practiced, and then what she had learned, she taught him. And in this way, they were both able to reach liberation. So there's many, stories about that, and we can see how when in a family you maybe have two people who are interested in practice, then they can benefit each other, right? And they can help each other go in the direction of a positive path. So that is, helping each other on that path to liberation, right? When we talk about that altruistic concern, that is kind of that true altruism, right? Otherwise, if we're just kind of encouraging each other to get the resources for the happiness and comfort of this life, then our behavior is not that different from like the birds or the different four-footed animals, because we see that they also are doing that.
Meji kashela ani shende de men ngenje tomba ta ke suile lo me de ani chushi jo chishi jo meji chim shi sumbatar no ta be shinya do teje tombi lo ta jakka.
So, some people lack any scrap of humanity, and their nature is so depraved that they are unable to improve their behavior. Even a genuine spiritual teacher would find it very difficult to set them on the noble path. As the sublime beings of the past have said, the abilities of a disciple can be shaped, but not their basic character.
Ota mrichi telata boge le to chimbo le ngamba to chimbo cha ngamba to chimbo ta tndi yo shu chimbo yo ba ina hakosar mjing ngamba sigilare.
So Geshe is saying that, in terms of this verse, it is talking about somebody who possesses kind of a negative or a depraved nature. So Geshe said, how is that defined? It's defined by somebody who is extremely heavily burdened by unwholesome karma and also unwholesome imprints. I think here we could even say bakchak as imprint. You could also translate it as habitual tendencies here. So, a person who is kind of burdened by that, even if you take them to an excellent teacher, even if you take them to kind and wise people, even if you take them to good Dharma friends, it's going to be very hard to change their trajectory.
So,
I mean, of course, that's the case for us, whereas even in the case of Buddha Shakyamuni, when he was in this world, trying to benefit, there were still people who only saw his faults.
This one?
That was again.
So that's somebody,
right?
That's when you call your lottery Kawashi Gayati, that the end of what you just said there's a Gion.
Can it low truk?
Kalajani de Gayati.
A kalpatruk,
Lotula.
Lotula, oh, Los.
Jan de Gayati. That digital, that good issue.
Dilago.
Rimas.
Ale, listen. Okay.
That's something.
Geshe changed his mind about saying something. It wasn't Ngodrup that time. So we continue.
Niesoto Koy Niemi, Niepa Shetom, Sendi, Dunga Chetavalago, Dropi, Loteni, Machena, Chilanjupi, Jenginjugo, Tawane, Mache.
A person who feels not the slightest consternation, either on hearing of lower rebirths and the ills of samsara, or in the face of this present life's sufferings, has no determination whatsoever to liberate himself from samsara, and therefore no reason to engage in Dharma practice. So Geshe said, as we go through these, the beneficial way to think about it is not that Patrul Rinpoche is talking to somebody else. The beneficial way to think about it is that Patrul Rinpoche is talking to us. So it's advice that applies to us. Ale, plaster. So Geshe said one of his teachers, I guess he wasn't pleased with Gekyu. Oh, sorry. The discipline master at the monastery, he was displeased with the monks for some reason. And he said, there's no point in giving you advice or in trying to talk Dharma to you. It's just like throwing water onto plaster. No matter how much water you throw, the plaster just becomes harder and harder.
And
this is a real danger, actually. People can study and practice the Dharma, and they can become like quite scholarly or knowledgeable, but in fact their character will worsen, right? They can become prideful and so forth. We see this, right? So we really need to always keep in mind that the purpose of practicing the Dharma is subduing or taming the mind. The purpose of practicing the Dharma is to weaken, to diminish the afflictions. So if we look at ourselves honestly and we see that no matter how much I study or practice the Dharma, I don't see an improvement in myself. We can see some of the points here as applying to us, actually. So Geshe said another kind of Tibetan example that's used is that bag of butter, right? So it's, it was leather. It was a leather kind of bag that used to hold butter, and as it's held butter for such a long time, it cannot absorb any of the moisture of the butter into the leather anymore. So don't become like that with the practice of Dharma. So, we can easily, probably many of us, rattle off the defects, the faults of samsara and so forth, right? But we can also maybe be able to know those, but not have any kind of real feeling for them, right? And so this is a problem. Right. So Lama Tsongkhapa, he says in one of his Lamrim, Stages of the Path texts, that if one is not able to even dream about the faults of samsara or the difficulties of the lower realms, then, one is not able to achieve one's own welfare. And then how could one possibly think about the welfare of others? Milam nanglula ngensung kola samlutang yarwa.
어 용거야 말에 소화 용거만 용거 인내를 봐서 말로들어야 용거
Yeah. So Lama Tsongkhapa is kind of critiquing, like, not only are we kind of like empty of feeling when we contemplate the disadvantages of the lower realms, but even in our dreams, if the lower realms appear, we don't have any particular fear or dread of them.
어다想봐도 니지 보게 손주지세 소화 땡보 지용하셔 봐라 동보 소소게 띵던 니지 봐 고발을 딱 니주걸로 비도 보지 용거야 알았어.
It's really important to understand that to really bring forth love and compassion for others, we need to have the peace in place of the understanding of the difficulties of samsara and the lower realms in a way to bring forth that mind of definite emergence or renunciation. In the absence of that, our love and compassion for others will be very limited.
어다 든다 누누시에 대해 된다 지민누지다 마대아 소소게 초이토라 반다 가제트다 초와요 바시소 가레스.
So it's really telling us, when we think about the faults of samsara, about the difficulties of some of these realms, we shouldn't think it's just like something that we're watching unfold on a television set, separate from us, right? We should think like, what would it be like for me if I was in such a situation?
어단 어든 저건데 왔어. 어단 인주걸로 더든 저스 봐.
Loso.
답이 치동 라마라 대바 주제 좀에나 댐빈 jungon가 대 답이로도 뭐죠.
So the next one, to have no faith at all in either the true Dharma or in the teacher, shuts off any access to the teachings and bars entry to the path to liberation.
다 손지기 치를 가워도 대바도 다 근데 이치 매나 다 될라 다 쇼를 더 로주도 놀래 지금 말아와 대마잖아 답이 고코로 가르고요.
So of course, it makes sense, right? If we don't have any liking or appreciation for the Buddha Dharma, then how are we possibly going to be motivated to study and practice? And if we have no motivation to study and practice, then the door to liberation is closed for us, is it not?
손지가 치 시동도 돼.
Yeah.
타방 있는 답이 대신 있는 로야게 된다. 다 조수인 거 알아봤어.
Right. So we should understand the purpose of the Dharma, of the teaching that the Buddha spoke. The purpose of the Dharma was to propose a path towards that bliss of liberation.
그는 가와래. 지라마도 대지나요. 소지치도 괜찮은 타반 대바 노지 샤 스켄조서 총화지를 샤서 로가야 되고 타반이네 그거 알지 디체드레스.
And so in the Uttara Tantra Shastra, it explains that the real reason for going to refuge to the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, is to achieve that real liberation. Tarpa Ngodrup, right?
답이 되시지 그야 이다 디데데 어느 게줘서 총화지 그 인지 민족 다 하도 뭐 공부 좀지 들어봐라 인지 민족 그거야.
So the point here is that we go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha because we are seeking that ultimate happiness of the bliss of liberation. If we were merely trying to achieve higher rebirth in the human or in the Deva realms, actually going for refuge to the three jewels is not required for that.
다 조조 타바세나 강에서 다 강에서 그 논이 조언다고 잡았는데 제거든요. 델리타에 다 타와스유나 다 타왕이는 로요.
So when we speak about liberation, we can speak about liberation from suffering. And when we think about the different types of suffering, it is that final one, the liberation from the pervasive or compounded suffering, that is what leads us to true happiness.
다 대마트는 잡았는데 제거든요한테 능하게 짜와다고 시다고 쪼고래. 델리타와 거기에 다 수기돼 손지지보이자 자 템바보 소 손지게 되기래.
So we see the Buddha jewel as the teacher or propounder of the teaching. In this context, what did he propound or propose to us? He proposed to us that of the three types of suffering, suffering of change, and the all-pervasive or compounded suffering, that this all-pervasive or compounded suffering was the root of all of the other problems. If one were to abandon that, one would achieve true liberation.
그래 마도 답이 매 코로스고 줄라요아르다스 대우하고 가라와스 못해봐.
Miteba.
저기 마페 녜네 타바사 매도 코로스고 줄라 빼자노라요아레스.
Loso. So it's really important to understand what the Buddha meant by liberation. Because if we look in the texts of like the Forders, which is I guess those Indian traditions predating the Buddha, some of which we would now call Hinduism, they also use this word moksha or liberation. So they did have this as a concept. And so what we would say is that they had methods and worked very hard towards eliminating these first two types of suffering, the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change. But this third type of suffering, which we say is the root, this pervasive or compounded suffering, this is only possible to defeat through the doctrine of selflessness, through the doctrine of emptiness. And this is why the Buddha proposed that as essential for liberation. Yeah, so and that also tells us why the Buddha said, I have discovered this nectar like Dharma, but there are no disciples suitable to receive it. Yeah, and so if we really want to taste that Amrit, to taste that nectar, right, that's an opportunity that we have to have in our own hand through our own efforts. So when we talk about the doors of Dharma, right, we talk about the door of the path to liberation, the door of the training of the bodhisattvas, and the door to the path to complete enlightenment or full Buddhahood. And we can say that a stable mind of definite emergence of renunciation, this is the door to the path to moksha or liberation. And bodhicitta, and so this is whether we're talking about Paramita Mahayana or Tantra Mahayana, bodhicitta is the door to the Mahayana path. And so Lama Tsongkhapa stated really that the door to the path of the Paramita Mahayana, the Sutra Mahayana, and the door of the path to Tantra Mahayana, this is really the mind of bodhicitta. And it is through bringing forth the mind of great compassion that we are able to activate the Mahayana lineage or activate the Mahayana potential. And so one of the causes of activating that lineage, in fact the most important cause, is that mind of great compassion. So sorry, ngakla jupe go wang dene? Okay. So the empowerment is what unlocks the practice of Tantra, but still, even though that is the case, the door to the path of Tantra remains bodhicitta. People who take pleasure in harmful or negative actions and who fail to control their thoughts, words, and deeds are devoid of any noble qualities and have turned away from the Dharma.
tani ta nima no jires.
So-
Ina yo muge shawa ta tandi pacha shu chimbola tani chila magawa ta ri ndo ke momo yungi.
So Geshe said we can see this, very clearly, even in places where it is said that the Dharma flourishes, right? So in countries where Buddhism became widely practiced, we can think of China, we can think of Tibet. Even though the Dharma was widely practiced in those places at one time, there are still people who took delight in harmful or negative actions. And so they are not able to cultivate qualities.
Ta tebi momo na ta momo ji wa sa wa ta de ta ju ba. Ye te ge wa tong ji je no wa me pa chi yin de za sha pa ta chana chila zhuo me bi ru ji la ye te ma xie.
Yeah. Some people are no more interested in spiritual values and dharma than a dog in eating grass. Since they feel no enthusiasm for the dharma, its qualities will never develop in their minds.
Ta te no ji ne pe ji ya ni mo ta pe ni mo se na mo de pe le la wo ya. Pe na pa ju an jo no la. Ser lu na re shema lu na re ko de wo me ha isa. Ko ma yu yung ge wa.
So Geshe said that another example is given is a cow. Right? It doesn't matter if you pour in soil or you pour in gold dust into the ear of a cow, it's still going to shake its head to get it out. So it's a little bit like that. So a liking for even the practices of love and compassion, much even more so, right, a liking for the practices of the Buddha Dharma. This is not something that just kind of easily comes by. There has to be a lot of causes and conditions that a person has in place before that arises. And even people who like the Dharma or who like these positive qualities, amongst them, those who really put effort into study and practice are relatively few, right? Anyone who, having entered the basic vehicle, so this means the sutra path here, breaks his vows and commitment to bodhicitta has nowhere else to go but the lower realms. He will not escape from states where there is no opportunity to practice the Dharma.
This one,
So this is the promises that we've made, connected with the path. If we make a lot of promises and commitments, but then we don't kind of at least pay attention to whether we're even trying to keep them, then this will lead to many difficulties. But also remember, right, there are ways to purify these negativities, and the most powerful way to purify negativities is through cultivating the mind of bodhicitta and an understanding of emptiness. Lama duksha chik marbe. Lama duksha chik marbe. Yeah, so many of you will know the story of Mahindra, and this is the story, right, about a prince who fell who fell under the influence, if you will, of an evil friend and teacher who told him that he should kill his father in order to achieve the kingdom, and he ended up actually killing him. Yeah. But after he committed the action, even before his father kind of had his last breath of life, he immediately brought forth a mind of regret. So he had that regret, but in a way a lot of things had already unfolded because through his actions his father had died. Right. And so because he performed the action But before the result of the action, which was the death of his father, unfolded, he developed a strong mind of regret. It is said that he had the engagement or the preparation of one of the 5 actions of immediate retribution, right? One of those is killing your father, but he did not have a complete accumulation of the karma of an action of immediate retribution.
소매가 레서 매바데 가르레세리 레카 차소는 타마타마 콘드바도 단디 마소 소네라 거기 콘저완도 사레스.
So why was it not a full accumulation of one of these 5 karmas of immediate retribution, or sometimes called 5 uninterrupted karmas? Because before the result of his action had manifested, his father passing away, he brought forth a mind of regret.
다 모아서는 니지데 캔사지렌도 와스. 다 바바 좀만두세 김마지 실라바이나 콜.
Yeah.
바바 샴만두 자지라바이나.
Losa.
니 파자 자보가 렉자로 무샤카테기스.
Ale.
마시가 자보 좀만두 자라바이나 제코노.
Losa.
자보 제코노 타르 모자야라.
Yeah. Kyone commençons sur cela, Yadi?
세니에다스 케차시도 와스. 자보 제코노 자야 레스 제코.
Mahinja Segen Gyabati.
Maybe Jabo Majida Koropawa.
Ila Losa.
Sekono Zuyawa.
Tambo.
Sekono.
Yeah, Huggerson.
Ta kon the Malotarawa.
Yeah.
Ta Jabo Shimundu za Silava in a call.
Yeah.
Koroganiala.
Yeah.
Kijalo Shakati is Jabo. Take it a shake.
Kineko give this co trong sasun lasun taksu gitsu matro na shena.
Matruel get a shake to us.
Yenekos co can't say sundi lagore mato drung dondag mendus.
So you need wishing to us. Quote Sekono Jaya, res Kuvajandasin. Korok Pava Senko Yandas Jaya, was Senkono.
Okay.
Tumundu us.
Losa.
Samboki Sayag like a Zivarawa.
Yeah.
Ta kon Yavashas Harawa.
Yeah.
Yavashasane, ta Mux Donil, Jabush Mandula.
Yene the kosegi like a goats na kande separes dug tene kari na konti ke kent pe kensa chik. Samlo tanta.
Torimbote Gunade or was Sayag Ched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kitchen Basis she could do.
Yene kosegi like a chepares lausuma.
So she was that kitchen yet. The second say Lekachin and Sekunian, Lekam was once.
Ale, okay.
Hagosarwa, Hagosi Zu,
Right.
Kunakanget and Joss once.
Okay. Yeah. Hagoson.
Teswa.
Yeah.
Ta Joan el Kota, or ta say at Rem, Medus Conjavasheswa.
Ale. Right. Okay.
Javashes.
Okay.
Tanya
Givas-
Akita.
Yeah.
Tan Javashin the key Koro Opojilla.
Yeah.
Ta Choros Tagaro shows.
Yeah.
Jabushim Mandu are called Silava,
Yeah.
Kogani, like Chala Kangati, Shakati.
Okay. Sorry. So the story did not make any sense to me whatsoever, but now I think it makes sense to me. So I just don't understand. Ko setan kandesre.
Tanya, that's the Budru Hakos.
Yeah.
The Mukanga Juno, Makanga Juno.
Right.
Talagarawa.
Okay. Yeah.
Mukanga Juno, Jabi, yet tak data sketcher.
Yes.
Jabi Shalon, Momo Jujal and the data on the Leon.
Yeah.
Oh, Cossack millions or the questions one.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's a very complicated story, at least for me. It's fun.
Get a machine, so
It's a self-made drum love. So anyways, you got kept you guys waiting. Sorry. So okay. So anyway, there was this mind of regret, right? And because the mind of regret happened before the completion of the action, Geshe mentioned that it was not a complete karma of killing. So anyways, what I wasn't clear on, because the next part of the story is he had kind of done the action to kill him, and his father was in the prison. However, his father was not dead yet. Because he had had this mind of regret, he sent a whole bunch of people to the prison or wherever his father was being kept to check on him. And he said, if someone can reassure me and tell me that my father isn't dead, I'm going to give you half of the wealth that I have in the kingdom. So whatever he had done to his father, and I asked Geshe several times about how he was killed. I don't know how this happened. So whatever he had done to his father was in a bad state, but he was not yet dead. However, when all of those people who the king had sent out to check on him approached the cell or the prison or whatever where he was, he thought, oh my God, they're going to torture me or whatever again. And based upon the fright he had from that, he suddenly died. Loso.
하고서 다 레서야 말 가르서 탐에 그런 거든 세그도 somebody 매송아스.
So the point is that Mahindra, he did not accumulate a complete karma, right? Because his motivation to kill his father was already gone and replaced by a mind of regret before the death actually happened. But, right, there was a partial karma accumulated because at one point he had wished to kill him and he sent him to the prison and had people performing all of these things in order to bring him to his death. So we could say that Mahindra didn't have within his continuum a complete negative karma of one of the 5 actions of immediate retribution, but he had a karma resembling that. So how was he able to go from that very heavy negative karma to liberation in that life? It was first through that mind of regret and purifying the negativity, but also his contemplation on emptiness, right? Through understanding emptiness, that negativity was dispelled and he was able to reach liberation. So then the most powerful purification for any type of negativity, right, is bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness. There are many mantras we can recite and many rituals we can perform for purification, and those are useful, but not as powerful as those. Sangak gini tsu diyo re tanda. Anyone who, having entered the secret mantra vehicle, breaks his Samaya commitments to his teacher and spiritual brothers and sisters, will bring about his own ruin and theirs, destroying any prospect of accomplishments. These are 8 propensities that lead one away from the Dharma and snuff out the lamp to liberation. Saja. So Geshe said that this is speaking about the degeneration of Samaya, or sacred commitments that one makes in the context of the Vajrayāna practice, and so it mentions all of those difficulties there. It is said that actually even if one is inhabiting a place where many people have broken their Samayas or commitments, that the meditator, one who meditates in such a place, will not be able to bring forth realization. So that should give us pause to think about something. If even the degenerated samayas of others in a certain place prevent meditators from being able, who haven't had those breakages, from being able to bring realization, if we break our own samayas, what kind of consequence does that have for us? So Geshe said that it's a point that needs to be made because it's really easy to receive like highest yoga tantra empowerments and different types of vows. But, you know, it's a lot harder to guard the commitments that we make in the context of those. Yeah, listen. So before these 16 factors that leave no opportunity for the practice have been carefully ruled out, people in these decadent times may look as if they have all the freedoms and advantages and are true practitioners of the Dharma. Geshe said this passage is particularly important. However, the chieftain upon his throne and the Lama beneath his parasol, the hermit in his mountain solitude, the man who has renounced the affairs of state, and anyone who might have a high opinion of his own worth, each may think he is practicing the Dharma, but as long as he is under the sway of these additional limiting conditions, he is not on the true path. Again. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Geshe said that this is really important, right? Because people are impressed by appearances. But this goes for the Lama beneath the parasol. It goes for the king sitting on his throne. People who possess name and station in life, and even who may speak the Dharma. But whether they are definitely practicing the path of Dharma or not, this is not a given. One must always observe and be careful. So easy example, somebody sitting on a throne and preaching Dharma, but their motivation is to make a name for themselves so that they can have a wealthy and a comfortable life. That's not really the practice of Dharma at all, is it?
This one?
So, before blindly assuming the forms of Dharma, check your own state carefully first to see whether or not you have all the 34 aspects of the freedoms and advantages. If you do have them, rejoice and reflect deeply on them again and again. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Geshe said blindly assuming the forms of Dharma. This is how the translator rendered it, but the Tibetan has kind of a different connotation. It's nervousness, excited and nervous. We get excited and nervous, and we enter a form of Dharma without even really thinking what we're doing. This is what is being critiqued here, actually. So Geshe said that there is a mistake here, he thinks. It mentions 34 aspects. In his estimation, this should read 24. Yeah. So 3 sets of 8, if you think about it in terms of 3 sets of 8, that's why Geshe is counting it that way. And then if you add 10 extra conditions, then that would take you to 34. Yeah. So it's really, if we look at these and say that we possess all of these necessary conditions, right, and we are free of those states lacking leisure, then we should rejoice and kind of firm up our resolve. If we look at these and we realize we don't have all of them in place, then we want to take action to try to bring them in place. And if we have all of these conditions in place, our task is to engage really purely with the Dharma so that we are embarking upon that path to liberation. If we have all these conditions in place and we don't try to cultivate with awareness the path to true Dharma, right? It's like having a precious jewel go to waste. So Geshe said we will end the discussion of words of my perfect teacher here, and we will go to the other text. So listening to these precious essential instructions of these great lamas as contained within a text, right? The purpose of this is to activate our positive potential. We must never forget that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dumpa di. Deduk di juda boji. Korwegi tsawadi ra. So we are on page 4 in Gampopa, and we are in the 10 things to understand. We are on number 7. Understand that pleasure and happiness is the demon of attachment, because it is the root of samsara. So it's telling us that if we're just concerned with samsaric happiness and we are completely cheated by the search for samsaric happiness, that this is a great fault. Because even like the cows, the birds, and the four-footed creatures, they are able to seek those samsaric types of happiness. The next one, understand that many engagements are obstacles for merit because they hinder spiritual practice. So it's true, if we always have to meet people, right, and then the only polite thing to do is engage in conversation, most people are conversing about meaningless things unrelated to Dharma, so we can see how that could hinder our practice, right?
So
Geshe said that if we're able to kind of meet and have a very active social life, but it's engaged with topics like positive mental qualities and how to engage in positive deeds and benefiting others, then maybe this doesn't hold. But most social interactions, it's difficult for them to become like that. So a lot of our engagements and our conversations, not only are they not necessarily something that will bolster us in the engagement of virtue, they are often something that can degenerate the merits that have been accumulated. Yeah. So an engagement, Geshe said, you can understand this in particular as a social gathering, in particular a larger social gathering where many people are coming together. Understand that enemies and obstructors are your teachers because obstacles are inspiration for spiritual practice. So then this is really just kind of talking about this principle of transforming obstacles into the path. So when we have an obstruction or another unfortunate situation, if we can see this as the ripening of our negative karma, and in this way transform that into kind of a spiritual perception, this will lead us into the direction of virtue. So it's transforming an obstacle into the path. So if we are also able to take those unfortunate circumstances and use them to develop an understanding of the defects of samsara, to develop that mind of definite emergence or renunciation, then we will be able to transform it into a practice of the Aryas, of the noble ones.
아니 둥아 고나 타바 타바라 그거 깔레카지메 스트레스가
Yes. So many holy beings have stated that if one is able to meditate on suffering and its nature, then it is easy to reach liberation.
어다디 지바라와 어딘지바 다지바 대동바 치통지 대동바르 치통지 로좀 메바른 뒤에 공라용 뇽바니데 시바샤
Understand that everything is of equal nature because all phenomena are ultimately devoid of self-nature.
어다 조조 단자 말이바 아니 내저 공조다 녀모 간데지나요 자루 딜로 로지 지쳐바치 포겐저 주사지 요아레 소노토네 콘서트 다 템보치네 레가치 되요아레.
So this is showing that whether we talk about the ignorance grasping at the self and really any of the associated afflictions, anger, attachment, and so forth, these are arising thinking that there is some sort of a pinpointable, findable aspect, some sort of inherently existent self-nature.
이네치는 아주 지포 걸어라다 제시부 tombaso 핀보사 미도 안 되어서 더가롱게 이네서는 tum바니 고야게 내시 되요아레.
So one of the ways, for example, that the teachings and the holy beings talk about our five aggregates or skandhas is as a heap. So the Tibetan word is pungbo heap. So it's actually the five heaps for the five aggregates. Even just hearing that word actually, pungbo tombani gidonda gyurebe.
핀보사 치 걸어라다 나타와 이나요 tum바니 된다지 되요아레.
If we think about this word pungbo or heap, it actually gives us a meaning of emptiness.
당긴 것만 가서 시에 대하 tum바도 떼주니까 녀도 지되요아레. 이네치나.
Right, and in fact, it will give us an understanding of both emptiness and dependent arising coming together.
나로서 빼나다 차파도 동아시위가라.
Chabadangdangwa, right?
porque lite sem zgutsa ya ba no sha ga yare lite mombo ji ya chuba ji yare ma to zgutsa ji ya mare.
So for example, when we think about the five heaps, right, we can think about the skandha or the heap, the aggregate of a form. So when we say that there is gonda lupo di yore samotana dene,
lipo te ya pore ani lite duchare sen garoso chaduni te zgutsa ya ba ji shegen duas.
Thinking that there is a pinpointable form or body that is inherently attractive or inherently unattractive, right? This comes from grasping at it as inherently existent, as pinpointable. Yes. There's this appearance that there is something pinpointable or findable there. But if it is a heap, right? Sorry, this is the other part. It is a heap. If the form is a heap, the form is just this body of many parts coming together, right? It's various limbs and organs and so forth. And then there is nothing stable or findable at all. Right. Because it is a heap, right? It is a heap. We understand that this body arises from many different parts being heaped together or coming together. It is a dependent arising. And because it arises dependently, it lacks inherent existence. And in this way, the dependent arising and the understanding of emptiness come together. So any form that arises that gives rise to attachment and aversion, we should think that it lacks self-nature, that true existence. Gonda, So any phenomena shares this characteristic of lacking inherent existence. Because all phenomena lack this inherent existence and are unfindable, then they are all of equal nature. If we're able to develop this understanding, a feeling for this teaching, then the mind is always going to be relaxed. It is always going to be at peace. Why? because with this understanding, the basis of any mistaken appearance or confusion arising will be cleared away. Then our way of thinking will be of a direction that is going to lead us to virtue and to peace. So thank you very much. We shall end the conversation here, and we will do our dedication. Changjo zemjo rinpoche maje banam chejo rechi chewa nyamba meba yang gone gondo bewa sho tongni tawa rinpoche maje banam chejo rechi chewa nyamba meba yang gone gondo bewa sho jambe pao jita jemba tang kundu zambo deyan dejente deda kungi jesu dalo chir gewa dida tamshe radungo Tuzun shebe gyawa tamshe ge ngowa gangla chodo ngabade dagi gewe tsawa dikun kyang zambo jeji rabdu ngowa gi gangri rawe kowe shingande pendan dewa malu jongwe ne chinre ziwan tenzin jamsoye shabe side badu tengyo. So we'll pause there. I'm sorry, we're going to take questions. And of course, as always, if you need to leave before the questions are finished, that's totally cool. But if you would like to stay for the discussion, you are most welcome. I'm just going to take a moment to adjust the volume so I can hear you properly, and we'll get started. Hey everybody, please go ahead.
I need to unmute everybody. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. Where do I do that? Come
on. I see several hands. I'm not sure who was first, so.
Mute. Okay, so now you can unmute. Please go ahead. I think Dekili first, then Carolyn and B.
Okay, yeah, Dekili, go for it.
All right. Whoop, here I am. We're doing Vajrasattva. And my question is, even though the motivation is bodhicitta and emptiness when you're doing these practices, isn't it just kind of chipping away at the store of negative karma versus applying bodhicitta and emptiness alone on a broader scale? And why not just wipe it all out and bang, like stay just focused there? Why just do this chipping away every night?
Yeah. I got you. Nanzo the dorje sembagi nyamlen di yore roa. Dene dorje sembagi nyamlen chichena kunong tets yore yene chirtang nyambo di nganso digpe gi le tets dag drogi du tets nyungru drogi du roa. Dene nganso di sen re dorje semba ngaksa. Dene mi gewa di tets nyungru drogi dua. Yene gya champo chatsangwa mepa soya yomare. Denda yimpa yindit sane, dene nganso di jangshu gisem dang tompa ni chipo gomna, dorji sempa kare chene pengires. Right. So one of the important things to consider here, right, is that if one is doing the practice of Vajrasattva really fully, this has the 4 opponent powers of purification embedded within it. And the other way to think about it is the power of the object. So Vajrasattva is the deity embodied aspect of the purification of all sinful karma. And because of that, he is a very powerful object through which to accomplish purification.
And
the mantra also is said to possess some special characteristics that make it powerful. However, Geshe is of the opinion that for it to be effective at all, we really need to have the 4 opponent powers in place.
Doje
And so if you think of his name too, Vajrasattva, right? We can think of this Vajra as representing the wisdom comprehending emptiness. So this accumulation of wisdom is even built into his name, yeah?
So hypothetically, if you did a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat, chipping away at the block and doing those things with everything, versus 3 months of simply focusing on every aspect of your life and all this stuff as well, and just apply.
Sorry, you have to define it a little bit more for me, like thinking about all the things of your life and all this stuff as well. Does that mean like every single bad thing that you've done, or does all this stuff as well include thinking about bodhicitta and emptiness?
Sort of thing as Vajrasattva. In some ways, it's like if I took 3 months of Vajrasattva, kind of chopping away at things as I thought them up, versus 3 months of cultivating bodhicitta and emptiness.
Okay, yeah. Now I'm clear. Okay. Yeah. Would the Vajrasattva be worth it compared to that, I guess is what you're asking. Right? Yeah. Then nganzo perna doje sempa boom chik gi tsam dena dawasum dabo chik drogire tua. Doje sempa boom chik gi sam dena digba jaya yores yine nganzo dawasum tompa ni dang jangshub gi sem gom jabna di pentok chewa marebes dene tutsa yona di sona yaga marebes. So Geshe-la's answer to that is, if we are able to have high quality meditations on bodhicitta and emptiness, this is more powerful than a Vajrasattva retreat. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you know, really, that type of meditation on those qualities is the most powerful type of practice.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Dekili. Carol, I think you were next, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm still digesting the answer to the last question. I found it difficult to generate an uncomplicated regret for choosing an unethical teacher. So it seems that we are regretting our own lack of wisdom and patience, and that's the way to purify choosing bad teachers. Yeah, I have another question after this.
So it's your lack of wisdom and patience, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Because and Geshe Sonam, Geshe talked about being too excited and nervous
Yeah.
You know, that whole,
Yeah,
and
it
that's
was
like
that blind, that was that thing about like a blind person. And when I was reading the Tibetan, I was also, is that like really what it means? And it's more like that kind of nervous enthusiasm, like I just got to do it, without really knowing what I'm doing. That was kind of the context of it. But
exactly.
anyways,
What's the name of that in Tibetan? That excitement.
I'm gonna have to look in the text and get back to you on that, Carol.
All right, because that's a very interesting concept.
It's in the text.
Thank
I
you.
will find the word for you. Just remind me. Yeah. Nganso perna nganso kyusem chi gogire dua roa nyambo topji nangla roa di tso da bochi gre dua. Dene kyusem di perna soso lama duksha chik damka chene. Lama duksha damka chea digpe giledi kandis jangi yores. Nganso kyo kari kola gogires. Nganso tagshe yapo ma chene. Nganso di shera pesha ma tangne. Zupa ma gomne hopte kala o ko lama yinsa ngachik sogo res dabo chik. Notru di kyosem rebes kandis re.
Me shose the tanga tsage chine ya to mone te lama te sal ta pa te ya tin no so na so no to ya ti. Yeah.
So Geshe said, and it actually connects up with your second point, Carol. He said, like, what you're regretting really is not taking the time, being nervous and making kind of an emotional but not informed decision. I've got to take him as my lama. That's what you're regretting.
Me shao kari na shitun jeba te rawas. O ta ngi te le ka che den ma so so ma te le ta she se yares.
And Geshe said, like, what you're regretting really is that the path that you cultivated was not the one that brought you benefit, right? The path that going down in that direction was not something that brought you benefit. So you can regret that.
Ta shose sen da jeba se yares ten da.
Yeah.
Ta gewal jeba she sona dipa.
Yeah.
Dipa lan jeba she sa gewa se yares.
Yeah. So the mind of regret is a funny thing. If we regret a positive action, that's unwholesome. If we regret a negative action, that is wholesome.
Shose senan jeba sen ta ganza nyimbo to jogo no tere ten da jiba res shawa karali no ten di ma so so bas na ten jeba re ten da.
So regret, Geshe said, doesn't have to be a heavy thing. It's just an acknowledgement of that wrong decision. I really shouldn't have done that decision. That wasn't good. It's basically thinking that wasn't good.
That last comment is very helpful. Thank you so much. Okay. And the second question is,
yes,
isn't everywhere we live inundated with people who've broken commitments? I mean,
nganso di damsik nyamya sacha denso mi topa ke tugyo maresine nganso kawa drona di damsik mejo chikyo tsigi marebesa.
Ta tuli ro to sono tuki mare fashi shira yo mare tiso.
Ale, karichane.
Me kawa drona diyo mare was. Saja kaje mate.
Geshe doesn't think that everywhere we go has broken samayas. You think there's only a few places where there's really serious broken samayas. So just avoid those places. Yeah.
How do we identify them?
The damsik chagyo ki sacha kandes hakoviresa.
Ta tozi chanju se saja se kar se kar tozi chanju saja se na ta genda ma phachi nolo ma tuni ma jaya rawo to.
Yeah.
Ta tandi shuna.
So places where there were wars between practitioners, places where there was a serious schism in the spiritual community, right? Those would be the places to avoid. Those are considered the most dangerous.
Okay, thank you. Ongoing work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carol. No worries. I think B, you're next.
Thank you for the last thing about where to avoid. Places to avoid. A follow-up on Carol's question on regret. I have two questions, so this is a follow-up on her question. For example, in 35 Confessional Buddha, after you've done all the Buddha's name, there's a long list of confession that you make on the various things that you have done to various people. Now, I can't remember all of that, and if I want to be lazy, but to cover all the ground, is it as good if I say I confess all the wrongdoing or negative actions that I've done due to my self-cherishing and self-grasping mind?
Yeah. Yes. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So you're doing like the tungchak, so the general confession with the 35 Buddhas, and then there's a prayer that's appended after the recitation of the names, and then it lists all these positive, mistaken things you have done. But you're saying like maybe you don't have the time to do that, or you just don't feel like doing that. But if you say that you confess all of the negativities that you've done due to the self-cherishing or self-grasping mind, is that sufficient? Is that it, B? Normally I can hear you well, but your voice was very soft today. But did I get it?
Is that as good to say
As
that?
good as reciting that whole verse that happens
Yes.
after. Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Nanso tungchak seria di roa. Nanso dejin shepa sumshu songa gi ming denso kyorgire dua. Dene di jela di chishak dapo gi netso chikroa nga dipa di chikso tsare kanisla gre gendin yenje chikso tsigires nganso di kushap meba gi netso denso yeres tets ringbo re dua roa. Di dordu sona dene nga rang chenjin dangzin la tene topma mepane migewa karesana di shagi yus labna di drogirebes chatsangwa dag drogirebes
다 차트와 다야가 다 로그로 와서 로도
dangzin dang rang chenjin. Yeah.
다 이나에 단기 때리지 마스 레레잔데나 셀 제야를 대시 배도 와서 와서
So Geshe said that yes, because negativities are arising from self-cherishing or self-grasping, then when you confess in this way, it's a very effective way to confess negative karma. But when you have time, it's good to recite that verse. And the reason it's good to recite it is more because it reminds us of all the negativities we should be avoiding. It's a reminder. So for that reason, it can be helpful.
나 생제 통짜를 좀바 거기 니지 거기에서 니지 워도 와르도 뭐네 나서 라 로초근디 와서 다 이나 이네 야와신데 그지 거나
So Geshe said it's a little bit like when we try to bring forth love or compassion for all sentient beings, and we think, I have love for all sentient beings, I have compassion for all sentient beings. That can be useful, but whether that's really there or not, then if we do like for like particular groups of sentient beings, kandes soso tanya bo taring bo dam. But if you break down those sentient beings into different groups or into the different types of suffering they're experiencing, and then try to develop that love and compassion, that can make the practice richer.
그래서 다 된다 버려 단계 땡기네 거로 내가 막 만다와지 저와지 된대 요아래서 저러서 해야 돼 우리
But he said that if you don't have time, be this principle that you stated arising due to self-cherishing and grasping, that this is absolutely correct, but that he thinks the practice may be richer if you go through the verse.
Second question is, what is the difference between Tokpa and Nampa?
Tokpa is in conceptual thought.
Nampa, or see, I think there's a second word.
What's the second word mean in English? Maybe I can help you.
I can't trust the English translation in this. Tokpa and Nampa, I think that's what they call.
Nampa usually means aspect. Is that the word you're looking for?
No. It's something relating with the conceptual mind.
Oh, okay. Tokpa. So again, yeah. So Geshe said that in the general confession that follows the 35 Buddhas prayer, there's an acknowledgement of many of your possible. Chisha. So in the general confession prayer, the one that starts with Uhula, there's a confession of many possible mistakes one has made, which is very useful. But B, I'm sorry, you're going to have to follow up with me. Once you find that second word, then ask me, because I'm not sure what word you would mean. Tokpa I understand, but Nampa means aspect.
No, Nantok. I'm sorry, Nantok.
Oh, Tokpa and Namtok. Yes, yes.
Yes,
So
yes.
the difference between conceptual thought and this Namtok, which we often say as discursive thought or mistaken thought or projection. That's what you're asking?
Yes, yeah. What's the
Okay,
difference
yeah.
between the two?
Tokpa dang Namtok nigi nangne kepar kare yores.
다때 제가 매봐서는 야가래. 저도지나.
Ale.
부파도 노토를 제가 만들었어.
Loso.
노토를 좋아도 녀바선다 제가 야러왔어.
So Geshe said that in a way, it's better not to distinguish between this conceptual thought, the Tokpa, and the discursive thought or projecting thought. But what we can understand is that within this discursive or projecting thought, there are things that go to the negative and things that go to the positive. Namging also namtok tes duksha tsigire Tokpa.
노징 아주 노토 당 녀바쇼로 소노 돈이 계시게 되요 야러왔어.
So Geshe said, why you're probably thinking this is that the namtok term is used more frequently when we're talking about unwholesome thought patterns.
다때 이게 당다 가서 지라를 맞다. 이게 시워요와 요 말이야. 소소 셴나 주거래, 마셔나 주거래. 저도.
Ah,
부파도 노토.
yeah,
야와 셴나요 셴요 알아요.
right.
마셔나요도 요 알아요.
But if you go just with the terms or the etymology themselves, you could use Tokpa, conceptual thought, and Namtok, projection or discursive thought, as synonyms. You could also distinguish Tokpa as something more neutral and Namtok as something more likely to be problematic.
가서 야와 셴나 노토서나 강에 찍히겠어. 나 드리고 두바그리 고인 받는 노토.
So when teachers use the Namtok, they often say Namtok instead of Tokpa to distinguish a conceptual thought which is creating problems.
So if a conceptual thought is creating problem, I suppose it is necessarily discursive.
Yeah, then it Tokpa di Ngodrup then it lopada poro.
노토서나.
Yeah,
다 루파 세나요. 다 루타
Ngodrup.
노토 제레 노이슈 노토 와토바.
Geshe would describe it as like discursive is maybe, I think it's better to say tending in the wrong direction or mistaken. I'm sorry, discursive was my word B. I think it's maybe not so helpful.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
또 야와 가치쇼 된간조.
Yeah.
빼나 손지도 손지 생바 다체 도보 가제이나요. 자 첨보도 했더니 뚜바 좀매 이자. 손지 노지가 내가 제도야.
Right. So we understand that holy beings, right, like hearers and bodhisattvas and so forth, they reach very high levels of realization. But because they still are operating with Tokpa, with conceptual thought, they cannot accomplish the same things that a Buddha can accomplish.
하고서라 다 손지세 대한테 거로 밖에 예대 리서치에서는 끊어치는 그거요. 또 빨리 뛰거요 말이야.
When one reaches the level of Buddhahood, there is a natural fulfillment of the welfare of all sentient beings. Gonda, Ngodrup Tokpa Gogyo.
끊어도 들이치는 그거요 말이야.
But because they don't rely on conceptual thought, a Buddha doesn't need to bring forth a motivation to benefit sentient beings and do the preparation to benefit sentient beings. It's just being like fulfilled organically, if you will. So this is a big Tokpa Yodame, Sangye Dang, Jangchub Semba Dang, Nyentu Dang Din Sorwa. So this is a big difference. That absence of conceptual thought is what distinguishes a Buddha from other holy beings such as Shravaka, hearers, and such as bodhisattvas.
So it would be accurate to say that conceptual mind is an object of abandonment eventually.
Tokpa seria di pangja res labna digirebes.
부자래서 말했어. 당연히 이나 부자래 말했어.
We can't say that definitively. Karichene. Karin san that jampa dang ninje topa. Sang maging. That's because before Buddhahood, we need to cultivate things like love and compassion, which are conceptual thoughts. So for us, it's not an object of abandonment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, B. Thanks, B. And I see both Rebecca and Annie. I'm not sure who was first.
I'm just going to go for it.
Go for it. Go for it.
My question has to do also with this blindly and nervous part of the text where they're talking about going blindly and having a shallow understanding of Dharma, and Geshe said that it's more correctly translated as excited and nervous.
Yeah.
And then because I've been teaching lately, this made me really concerned because a lot of times when I am teaching the Dharma, in particular in Shantideva, when I'm preparing, I get very excited and nervous to teach it. And I am wondering if I'm actually sort of deluding myself and the students in not accurately explaining what I have gathered from listening to teachings and research to giving this to the students. Am I actually misleading them?
Yeah. Okay, I understand. Nanso nguma di kandes lagore di Patrul Rinpoche nanglola ya nanso di kandes lagore che ngene me pa tsagi tsigi la tene zugires tene di apo jogyo mares ro che shegen da poyena morang che shepe kapola ko samsam perna junjuk da po che shena dene samsam di kola tets tsagi tsigi cha dene hope the kala chi kosong da po samlo tangi yore duwa ro dene chi chena tsagi tsigi kaprula di dapo chik zuna dene jela che shena dene di getru den sudan gokor thangye dang tets da po rebesa
다 대도 말아왔어. 대도 자고 말했어. 어다 치기서 그 밖에서 디사보든 라마라야 이제 텔라텐 소소 자게 대서 자그래 때네 이나이 된 거도 야도 로 말아왔어.
So Geshe doesn't think that it becomes like cheating or misleading the students in any way. You know, there's aspects of the Dharma that are very kind of moving and profound, and because of like an overexcitement or whatever, we might not go into depth enough in our understanding. But like, he doesn't think that that means that you're misleading the students or anything like that.
어다 소소 노아야 바 거지졌더니 어제 자네 디쇼를 시에 돼 봐이나.
Yeah.
다 된 거도 한다고 지로가 왔어.
It only becomes like misleading or cheating if you don't understand something and you pretend to understand it, or if you kind of have a misunderstanding that you refuse to resolve and perpetuate it. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I feel so relieved then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries, Annie. Rebecca, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
This may be whatever, but I have heard that His Holiness has written and said that he is coming back, and he is coming back outside of Tibet and China. And I just have never heard that before. In the past year, many years, he's said all different kinds of things about not being reborn, etc. But anyway, I heard that in a recent book and also in a lecture, he has said, which I mean is definitely a reason to rejoice. So I was asking about that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll ask what Geshe has heard about that. Dene nyechar Dza Rinpoche ko kewa jema pela kegyo mares jana ögi pela kegyo mares chiksung soa ine di ngoma gi sunya dang tets mindrawa res karin sana di ngoma di kutreng jema pecher yoga mares yomagus tapochik sung son anayandi chichana di pe yapochana dela kegin dabochik sung son tene di tes gyurwa chambochik re duas ane chirtan di kewa jema kelen yanganso di jesui rangwagi gimsen chik yores yene di pe ma insa jana ma insa di kea da sungya di dang sungya gyurwa droya di gimsen kandes chikres.
Me ta pe apo chana to pe la pashi ya de wa yar was so tigres ni wa ya pe la ta pe apo chaga me ba ta ji ta kasi ma chana
Mangsa mena da what
ro mena
yeah.
ro ya me pe luar shi mes
So Geshe, his understanding of it is that if the situation in Tibet somehow improves, then His Holiness would be, very happy that the next incarnation is in that place. But what Geshe heard him say several times recently is that His Holiness will not be reborn in a place lacking freedom. His Holiness does not want to be reborn in an authoritarian place lacking democracy. So in kind of current situations, then that would mean not there, right?
ta zo de yo si ma de ta da de ne sha ka ri ne de mo to ne le ka che ga isa ro yo bi luar chi le ga ya de ta zo de was.
And Geshe thinks this relates to like the next incarnation needs to be able to accomplish all of the important activities that the Dalai Lamas are mandated to accomplish. And that's not going to be possible in a place that lacks basic freedoms, in a place that is authoritarian.
ta yo si cho cho ta me sa da ta tri shu le te su ya te ju ta wo pe de jar ji kar se ko pe yo pon ro ya ta tri ge che to ta su ya
Kare so legin kelenya da wachi.
mare ta mo ya ro was mo ji ta ya po ma che na
Yeah.
ji ma yo ga me sa da ta ji ba ya che.
And in terms of when His Holiness has mentioned not coming back at all, Geshe has heard that on several occasions. He thinks that this is a skillful means of His Holiness to kind of get the disciples a little bit more proactive about their own practice, understanding that like if the disciples don't do their part, right, then there's not going to be the cause for a future incarnation.
ta to to ni jo an ya te sa te ri was
Listen, yeah. So that's okay. So Michi Canada la chichena trungire esta fuchi la so chianang la.
ya yo ta chu si ge was ka chu ta ko ma
So I saw someone mention Canada as a possibility. Geshe said it's possible. His Holiness hasn't really said exactly where yet at the moment, from what he's heard.
Geshe Sopa, the founder of Dza Patrul Buddhist Center, his reincarnation was recently found in Canada.
Yes. Yeah, no, someone sent me a picture. He's a little boy. He's about probably 10 years old. He's in school in Toronto, I think. Ngumadi Geshe Sopa gi yang si di kotanda Toronto la chejo.
Yeah,
and Geshe said there was a recent, maybe not so well known in our communities, but amongst Tibetans, very well known, who was reborn around Toronto as well, actually.
And he has a twin sister.
Ale, ako tsema redua Geshe Sopa di. Tsema di de pumo redua. Nice.
I was gonna go for Switzerland, sorry.
Ko Swiss yaga dus Canada le yaga. Might be safer. Switzerland always seems to come out relatively unscathed from all types of conflicts, doesn't it? Geshe said he's hoping there's no rush. Let's just assume that we can take His Holiness at his word that he's going to live at least to 110 or maybe even 113, and that'll be time to check that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Geshe said, he thinks probably a lot of in India and in places like Ladakh, these other Himalayan regions, they're probably all hoping that it's going to be there, right? But there's no rush. His Holiness still has time to figure it out.
Ladakh is in a disputed area with China. No, not Ladakh.
Sorry, B?
Ladakh is in a disputed area with China.
Ladakh chichena nyanga tsapo de janagi satsam konso saya tavcheche gire duas. Yeah. He says that's true. Yeah, no, there is a border dispute there. Dave, sorry. Dave, did you have did you have some social media questions? Go ahead, go for it.
There are no questions coming in through social media, but
you have a question.
I have a question. Yeah. So I was interested to hear Geshe talk about how a Buddha benefits sentient beings spontaneously.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it made me wonder if this is because the Buddha abides in the unification of the two truths, where the Buddha, the Buddha's activities,
they're like unobstructed because of
unobstructed or engage in the totality of things through ultimate nature. And if it's useful then to think as we dedicate, I've come to understand that dedicating with an awareness of emptiness is useful. So if one can dedicate one's own activities into ultimate nature, thinking that this is how you can traverse the totality of dependent arising. Yeah, do you get what I'm saying?
I do. I got it kind of in two parts. So I'm going to try to put the two parts, but if that second part, if you don't hear it in the answer, Dave, come back to me. But I think I have the gist of it. Then it nganso sangye dinso roa konso tokpa mepa semshen ropache tugires kunlongo gyomares di ropache samlotang goyamendus konso karin senda konso tokpa chatsangwa le drewa dabochik reduas. Dene di hoptakala semshin pentokche tubia kandes yongyores. Karin sena konso dempa ni duchik yulchik nyamdu tong tubgires. Dene dela tene konso hoptakala mi ropache tugires direbes topa goya mepa gigimsen ropachela ane dene dela tene dene ngaronso soso keo yimpe kaplola nganso perna ngoe munam shepe kapla dene ngaronso tompani korla samlo tangna dene nganso di topa mepa sange gikupang drubya ropache tubya tets pengirebes.
Ya ta tedo tender was nazo tetso no to dia ta kale ya shu cher ndone tandriga tombo topa ten joan ndone kale so
Geshe said, absolutely. Mariti younger sundang di topa me pasanda tomba ni da di ngoa kabla segire kare segire tanda komason.
Ya tanda sono to de ate.
Kare samlo tangde.
Tangar su tumani do ngoa to kare na sono to de ajwa wa.
Yeah.
Kale ko tash ma jiro sona.
Yeah.
De no jisel yuna ropache topa
mepa. So Geshe said, absolutely, if we combine a contemplation of emptiness together with our dedication, we can see this as creating the cause to abide in the two truths simultaneously and without relying on conceptuality be able to naturally act and benefit for sentient beings. Absolutely.
The pacha to chiba kotomazo saiza.
Yeah.
Okata tupaginese koro koyo.
Yeah.
Kwaki.
But if you want to talk about the reason that a Buddha is beyond conceptual thought, this relates to the extinguishing of the two obscurations, the afflictive obscurations and the knowledge obscurations. When the afflictive and the knowledge obscurations are cleared away completely, there's no necessity for conceptual thought. Candice? Yeah. And also to understand that means there's kind of no barrier between a Buddha and their experience of phenomena. So there's a continuous flow of phenomena appearing and simultaneously actions that benefit manifesting. Yeah. So this also means for us as ordinary ones, if we create the cause to receive a Buddha's help, there's absolutely no obstruction from the Buddha providing that help, right? Because the Buddha has perfectly accomplished all of the causes necessary to completely benefit sentient beings, right? Yeah. There is nothing that is kind of blocking him. There is no veil between him and those activities that benefit, or her. His enlightened activities manifest as kind of this natural synergy without requiring a particular motivation or planning or preparation.
And
the reason ties to being able to perceive those two truths, relative and ultimate, of the same phenomenon in the same moment. Yes. Tony Tobit Sherab. Topa. Ratatana Toga Tok. Ratatana Tokasa Tokma. Topa. Yeah. Yeah. So Geshe also wanted to say something just regarding this conceptuality and kind of beyond conceptual thought. It's really important to understand that the conceptual thoughts of love, compassion, bodhicitta, also that initial understanding of emptiness, it's not like as we kind of progress along the path, like the afflictions, anger, attachment, and so forth, like those conceptual thoughts disappear and diminish. With these things, it's like the love, compassion, and bodhicitta are conceptual, but they are reaching higher and higher and more refined states of perfection until they are powerful beyond conceptuality when enlightenment is achieved.
But
on the path, right, conceptual thoughts of the afflicted class, these are going to diminish until they're exhausted completely. Yeah. So a Buddha has within his or her continuum perfect love, compassion, and bodhicitta. Those began as conceptual thoughts while they were still cultivating, and now they are beyond conception but still present after Buddhahood. So Geshe,
thank you, Geshe.
Yeah,
this reminds me of the all-encompassing, all-encompassing yoga.
The all-encompassing yoga.
Yeah.
The chat sangwa gi nejor dawochi sanglo tangi res rasunjuki nejor dawochi sanglo tangi. Yeah. Yes, very much like that. Very much like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And
So have we covered? I think we covered everybody, right?
Yeah, covered everybody. There's more questions.
Is there a
coming.
hand?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I got to take my. It's like I'm in this state of old age where, like, when my glasses are on, it's not great, and when my glasses are off, it's not great. So whoever is next, you can
So
go.
So I think Rebecca, did you? Is your hand still up for another question?
No.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the answers to all that, though. I really appreciate it.
No worries. You're very welcome, Rebecca. So whoever had their hand up, if you'd like to say something. Oh, now there's no hands. Okay, so I think we're done. Everyone's asked. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Oh dear.
Thank you very much.
You lower my hand.
No, it wasn't me.
It was.
I think it goes down automatically. For me, it went down automatically. Sorry.
Can you hold on, B? Because Geshe's already out of his chair. Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to ask because it followed up right after what Geshe just say, so it's fresh. Yeah, but that's okay.
Well,
that's okay. That's
if
okay.
It's like, sorry,
No,
he's already gone, so I don't want to.
Yeah,
I think
it's okay.
I think he needs a loo break, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
So just write down what you're thinking.